Okay, it's 6:10, so we are going to start. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening, madam.
Welcome
Good
to
evening, Doc.
welcome to IBA 614 Global Marketing. In today's
Okay.
session 4, we will be treating global marketing research and information systems. Before we start, I'd like to welcome everyone once again and to indicate to everyone how happy I am to have you all back. I want you to feel free to ask any question whenever you feel you need some clarification on some issues as we go along. And if you can draw my attention by raising your hand so that I can give you the opportunity to speak. So in the absence of any question, does anyone have any question they would like to ask or anything they would like to say before we go on?
Yes, madam.
Please go ahead, Nene.
Please, how are you?
I'm fine by God's grace. And you?
I'm also doing well. All right.
We thank God. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much for asking.
So we can go ahead.
Yes, please. Okay. So like I said, in today's session, we'll be treating global marketing research and information systems. Now, as usual, before the end of the session, there are certain outcomes we hope to achieve. The first one being that we should be able to explain the importance of having a carefully designed international information system, and also to be able to appreciate the global marketing research process and its effect on the decision-making process. We will also be able to distinguish between different research approaches, data sources, and data types, as well as the key problems in gathering and using international market data. And we will also be able to understand the relevance of the internet as an important data source in global marketing research. So let's dive right in. We'll first start by discussing international marketing information systems. So under international marketing information systems, we are saying that there's a massive amount of data that is available from a variety of sources, which is accessible by different people, including individuals and organizations for various purposes, including decision making. Now, the issue is that all of these various sources of data that we are talking about come in different forms. So the trick is to be able to transform the data that you find, whether it is statistics or facts or opinions or predictions, into useful information for you to be able to use in your decision making as a marketer, and in this case, as a global marketer. However, having access to the information is not as crucial as having access to the information in a timely manner, because you can have an excellent amount of information, but if it is made available to you at a wrong time, you may not be able to utilize it in making decisions that will have benefits for your marketing activities. So it is very important that all the information that we get, regardless of the sources that we get it from, in the form that they come in, comes in a timely manner for us to be able to make good decisions. And that is why we need a good international marketing information system, because as global marketers, we need to have timely information regarding the various markets that we operate in or that we hope to operate in order to be able to make good decisions and formulate appropriate strategies to take advantage of the opportunities that we find so that we can make benefit of them in good time. And because of that, there has been the development and implementation of what we call the marketing information system. Because without putting in place a system consciously to ensure that you get all these relevant pieces of information in an appropriate manner and in a timely manner, you will not be able to utilize it in your decision making. So here we are saying that the development and implementation of the information system incorporates data management procedures that involve generating new data, gathering existing data, storing and retrieving data, processing data into useful information, and then disseminating this information to those individuals who need it in a timely manner. And when we speak of this in regards to the internet, this has been the bane of most institutions, which has brought about what we now refer to as the big data phenomenon. So with regard to the international marketing information system, what are we saying that it is? We are saying that it's an interacting organization of people, systems, and processes that are devised to create a regular, continuous flow in information that is essential to the international marketers' problem solving and decision-making activities around the world. So by definition, that is what an international marketing information system is. So by breakdown, using the diagram that we currently see on our screen, the international marketing information system involves three main levels. The first level being the input stage, where we are talking about the variety of sources of information that we need to be able to make adequate global marketing decisions. And these can come from the macro environment and the micro environment, both of which are external to the organization, as well as the company's own internal functional areas, including marketing, finance, production, accounting, and HR. Whereas the macro and micro environmental sources could be the suppliers that we work with, intermediaries, our competitors. When we look to the macro environment, we can talk about political issues, cultural issues, economic issues, issues that have to do with demography and even the natural environment. All these are sources of information that we can input into the marketing information system. Now, once we gather this information, we go through the process of making use of this information. And the process proceeds in 4 stages. The first stage is actually locating the information. And in locating the information, we can come across 2 main types of information. One being primary information and the other secondary information. Primary information being information that was gathered for the specific purposes or for the specific reason that we needed. And secondary information is information that was gathered for other purposes, but perchance are relevant to the decisions that we are looking to take at the moment. And then, like I said a moment ago, we can also talk about internal and external information, where internal information is coming from within the company, and then external information is coming from the micro and macro environment within which we exist. Now, once you're able to locate the information, you have to be able to gather the information. And gathering the information has to be done in a systematic and sound manner so that you can be able to make good use and sense of it. So in gathering the information, we have what we call marketing intelligence. Now, marketing intelligence is usually information that is not overtly available to everyone. But using your sources and your network, you can be able to come by this information in a timely manner for decision making. So sometimes you realize that certain pieces of information come out in the grapevine, especially for those who work in specific industries, about things that are going to happen. Sometimes it may be about the takeover of a particular company, or the stepping down of a CEO, or the appointment of a new CEO, or the development of a new product, which no one in the market actually knows about yet. But their marketing intelligence in your network, you as a marketer may be able to find out about it long before the action actually takes place and it's made open to everyone. So that is a form of marketing intelligence, which is made available to you as a result of your network, but it's not available to everyone. Then we can talk about marketing research, which most organizations usually commission to be able to solve a particular problem that they have identified with regard to their marketing activities. Then we can also talk about a record search, where firms will actually go through existing databases to find records relating to specific kinds of information that they feel will be beneficial to their activities as marketers in the global market. And then we can talk about analytical models. There are so many different models by which firms can come by information. Yes, Salim, please speak up. Salim, your hand is up. You have the floor. Salim, can you hear me? Okay, please do. Okay, so while Salim types, I'll continue with the explanation. All right. Sorry, a moment. Sally, what are you saying? What's the difference between espionage and intelligence? And I don't get a third one, and the marketing sense. Sally, can you please clarify? In the marketing sense, okay. All right. So we know that espionage, even by connotation of the word, is taken in a negative sense. Because espionage is actually where you consciously and maliciously use individuals and spies and negative, unethical means to obtain information about your competitors to be able to use against them or to be able to use to get ahead. That is espionage. But with intelligence, you are acquiring the information in an ethical manner, first of all. And you are doing it using your skills without malicious intent. So sometimes some of the lines are blurred between espionage and intelligence, depending on the way in which you come by the information. So let me give an example of espionage. Someone can commit espionage by, for instance, making their nephew date the secretary of the CEO of their competing company and giving her all these perks and telling her specifically what documents to snap and scan and send to you whenever she sees on the CEO's desk, in exchange for keeping her as your nephew's girlfriend and keeping her happy and spoiling her. That's espionage, because you are intentionally digging around for information to be able to use against your competitor. You're actually doing it in an unethical manner. But here's the case, perhaps you go for a mixer, an industry mixer, and you're having a conversation with one of the workers in another company, and then through the conversation, it comes up that, oh, have you even heard that our CEO is moving on to the next company? Oh, really? Yeah, our CEO is moving on. It's going to bring about a lot of change. That is intelligence, because you came by that information as a result of being at that mixer, which you did not attend maliciously. You went there genuinely as an industry participant to exchange notes and interact with people within your industry. So that is intelligence. You got it fair and square. So in terms of intelligence and espionage, these are two prime examples of the difference between the two. One very malicious and unethical, and the other one being innocent and ethical and gotten as a means of through regular conversation with no ill will in mind. So Sally, I hope that answers your question. Bridget, your hand is up. Please, you can speak.
Please, about the difference between espionage and intelligence.
Yes.
You know, for intelligence or gathering marketing intelligence,
yeah,
you are gathering it to be able to act on that intelligence, right?
Yes, you are.
But you gave an example about like getting, for example, getting an info that a CEO of a company is resigning or is moving on or other thing.
Yes.
By this information, should you receive it, there's a likelihood that you might also act on it.
Yes.
So that let's say that for company A, maybe you have interest in another company or you have shares in another company.
Yes.
It might cause you to react.
Yes.
And when you do that, it's also a crime in investment circles.
So we are speaking strictly in the marketing sense.
Pardon?
We are speaking strictly in the marketing sense.
But then if you still act on that information, they will come for you.
Yes, in terms of investment. Do you get it? Yeah, so here we are not just talking in just marketing. We have added investments to it. And there are rules and regulations that apply in that area as well. Bridget, do you get me? But if it is good, but if we are talking strictly marketing, and you hear that information and you act on it in terms of marketing, there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Do you get it? Because, for instance, the person tells you that the CEO is leaving, right? Okay. So if the CEO is leaving, it makes a position vacant.
Okay.
And usually when a position is vacant, they will scramble to fill it. And usually when a company doesn't have a CEO, sometimes it affects their decision making and the way their processes and things work.
Okay.
So at that point in time, it's an opportunity for you people to seize that moment in time where the company will be somewhat disorganized to make a move. Do you get it?
Okay.
Uh-huh. There's nothing wrong with that.
I get it in that sense.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Bridget. Okay, Vasalio is saying, in this highly competitive marketing environment, don't firms use covert and overt means to gather intelligence in order to stay relevant? Exactly. So it's about your morals and your ethics. Whether you're going to use overt or covert means, and whether your conscience will allow you to use all this information you got covertly against your competitors, when you know that ethically you didn't apply it the right way.
Cambridge Analytica.
Ivan, is that you?
Yes, well, I said Cambridge Analytica.
Oh, okay. Can you clarify? I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. Cambridge Analytica. I think during the 2016 elections in America.
Yes.
So Cambridge Analytica, through malicious means, gathered a lot of information about people.
Yeah.
And used it to help the Trump campaign to win.
Yeah. So that's clear espionage, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for that example, Ivan. Asamatano, please speak up.
Thank you, madam.
Yes, sir.
Is poaching ethical or not?
Poaching.
Poaching a staff from a
It depends on who you ask. It depends on who you ask. Because some people consider it to be unethical. And some people too don't have any problem with it. So it depends on who you ask. And the means by which the person...
I'm asking you.
If you are poaching a person who is vital to the survival of an organization, and you're poaching them at a time where you know the organization is in trouble, I think it is unethical in that regard. Because then it's like your competitor is down, and you are hitting them where it hurts. But if the organization is fine and they have a lot of people, everything is going well, and you just believe that they have this person that you need, and you can give the person a better offer, and you offer them that thing and they take it, and you push them, I think that one is fine. But
madam,
yes.
If your competitor is down, it's a good news for you.
Yeah.
Nobody will play romance with their competitor. Nobody will play romance with their competitor.
Yeah.
So whilst we all compete, I might put obstacles in your way.
So that you never get up.
You said overtly or covertly, so that I can move on. Man must survive.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Bridget, your hand is still up. Did you have something to ask?
I forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, okay. Yes, please. Ivan, please, you can speak.
Madam, I think that it is always ethical because the person you are coaching also has a choice to make.
Yeah.
It's not like you're forcing them to come to your workplace. You give them the option. The only time I think is that it will be wrong to do that is when you set traps for your competitor.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is wrong. But any other way, if it's just clean, we can give you better offers and stuff, I think it's always ethical.
I agree. I agree with that as well.
Ivan, can you clarify the trap? What kind of trap?
Okay. So like Madam was saying with the other side, that when things are bad, so let's say you instigate things about your competitor, when things are shaky, you intentionally stir the waters to make it let's say muddy, then you go poaching their best people. That is wrong.
Yeah.
But if everything is equal in the marketplace, I don't think there's anything that should stop you from poaching their best manager if he's willing to.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Thank you, Ivan. Sally, is your mic working now?
I've connected using my phone.
Sure. Please speak up.
Okay. So Ivan's point on Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica did not steal anybody's information.
Okay.
They mined the information. Let me finish. They mined the information that is available through their integration with Facebook.
Okay.
Depending on the terms of that contract, they were keeping copies of that those exact information in their database.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they developed a model that would help what we call political campaign advertisers target specific groups.
Okay.
So then they would give out information. So that is where the issue of fake news and fake media came about. So the issue of information, and then, but it is specific targeting. But going back to my earlier point on the fine line.
Can I address you before you go on?
Go ahead, Chief.
You remember that after why the Cambridge Analytica closed down? Because their dealings were unethical. What the information they took from Facebook, people did not know that was what they were doing. So it's still unethical.
No, you see, so ethics in itself. So if we are going to debate ethics, there are issues that talks about morality and issues of what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Now, depending on context, depending on culture, depending on environment, there are certain things that might be acceptable here in Ghana. Somewhere else, it might be completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
There are global ethical standards that organizations are supposed to follow. And till date, you see, it is because everything blew up and there is the Russian connection in it. That is why the issue around Cambridge Analytica has helped. They started in Europe. They even had an influence in Ghana's election before the issue blew up in the States. So it is because things blew up. That is why the whole company they need to be seen as doing something.
Yeah.
But as at the time that they were gathering that information, they had a perfectly legal contract with Facebook to collect that information.
Yes, but the purpose of the collection of
information to do targeted marketing, then of course, it's like you going to somebody who has dementia and you are going to sell a large TV screen costing $10,000. We know that the person has a health condition. So if you go and you sell that to the person and tomorrow you go back and say instead of 10,000, it's 20,000 because you know the person cannot remember, then it's issues around, unethical selling. So,
I think this whole argument goes back to the blurred lines between what constitutes espionage and intelligence.
Exactly.
Sometimes, depending on the context, like Salim said, and the angle you are looking at it from, and it counts as espionage. But in some other place, it may be just basic intelligence. So that brings to light the blurred line that we are talking about. And I thank you both for bringing this up and having this discussion. Lucy says that poaching can be ethical depending on how you do it. And human capital is dynamic and the company does not own the person. So the person decided. It is in the interest of the person being poached, not the poacher. Thank you for that submission, Lucy. I think you have a point there. Chief Tano, you can please speak up.
All right.
Yes.
I wanted to just comment on the statement one of my colleagues said about if your competitor is down, it's good news for you.
Yeah.
There are instances that is not good for you.
Yeah.
And that can actually be very disastrous to you.
Yeah.
If you are the only person serving the market or leading and your major competitor is down, that can let people see the extreme weakness you have. You will be overwhelmed with orders. You will then disappoint people because there is no alternative or backup for you to fall.
Yeah.
Your entire supply chain can be stretched and you'll be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that can bring you down.
Yeah.
So it is not always the case that if your competitor is down, you should rejoice. You should go to their aid. And that makes me make reference to the case of Microsoft and Apple.
Yeah.
When Apple was down, it was Microsoft, their key competitor, who lifted them up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And Microsoft survived over the years, irrespective of the help they gave to them.
Yeah.
Another one is Jaguar and Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. When Ford decided to buy Range Rover Ventures, Tata wanted to buy Ford. they said that, oh, they didn't know anything, and they really brought them down. But Ford went into bankruptcy, and Tata then came to bail Ford by buying their Range Rover and Jaguar units.
Yeah.
And that has made Ford survive the automobile industry.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need your competitor to be alive to make you grow.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you so much.
I like the sometimes.
That puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Okay. All right. So let's go on. So once we have been able to gather the information, we go ahead and then we now try to process the information. Now in processing, we are looking at all the activities we do to input the data, analyze the data, store the data, as well as retrieve the data. Now, once we are done with the processing, then it's about presenting and using the information. Now, processing and presenting and using information are two very critical stages in this process, because it is at the processing and presenting and using information stage where you can actually see the relevance or otherwise of all the information that you have gathered. And that is where the problems of our big data phenomenon originate from. We have been able to gather so much data and are storing them in all these servers. And this data comes in many forms: primary, secondary, facts, figures. And we are not able to appropriately and adequately process all the data that we have gathered to be able to get useful information out of it to use, right? So processing information and presenting and using information are two very important stages in the marketing intelligence system. Now, under presenting and using information, there are so many ways by which we can present information, in the form of reports, in the form of graphs, in the form of infographics, in the form of voice notes. We can organize workshops, seminars. These are all ways of presenting information and disseminating information as well. However, once you present and disseminate the information, the cycle is not complete until you are able to use the information appropriately to solve the problem that you set out to solve when you embark on locating and gathering the information. Ivan, please, you can speak up.
Doc, please, the process, is it always internal, or some part of it can be subletted out?
Some part of it can be external, depending on the sensitivity of the information. Okay. And how the organization feels giving access to that information to outsiders. Like, for instance, when it comes to social media, in Ghana currently, in the telecommunications industry, MTN has chosen to handle all its social media issues in-house, because they do not want to have the risk of getting an outsider managing part of it. Whereas Vodafone does part of it in-house and part of it out-house, right? And then Vodafone has fully outsourced, while Airtel Tigo does part of it in-house and then they outsource part of it. So you realize that depending on the organization, they can decide how to go about processing their information, whether to do it internally or to do it externally. Yes, Ivan, very interesting. It's as a result of a research that I'm currently doing with one of my students. And she's looking at how telecommunication companies in Ghana use social media as a form of customer service response, as a customer service response tool. Sorry. Yeah. Okay,
please, I want a copy of the finished work.
Pardon?
I said, please, I want a copy of the finished work.
Yeah, sure. I can share.
Me too, please.
Sure, Ivan. Della, you said ECG. Can you please speak up and explain further?
Yeah, ECG, because they are contact center.
Yes.
They fully outsource it to another company to handle any other information regarding faults and
Great. Yeah. So that's another very good example. Thank you, Della, for bringing that to the fore. So we have realized that a firm has to go through these 4 stages, especially when it comes to global marketing. And once they're able to go through all these stages, get the information, process it, present it, disseminate it, and then use it, they can be able to properly plan and budget for their global marketing activities, because it will help in their resource allocation, it will help in their planning, it will help in their implementation, as well as their control. Because one important thing we need to know about the marketing information intelligence system is that it's not a one-off linear process. It's cyclical, or what we like to call iterative. You keep going through the process in a cyclical manner because day in, day out, new pieces of information are coming out both internally and externally that can influence your current strategy and how the strategy is working. So the intelligence system is an iterative one where it occurs in a cyclical manner. So day in, day out, you keep going through this process of locating information, gathering it, processing it, presenting it, and then using it to influence your implementation and execution activity. Hence, the arrow we have here leading from the output back into the input. Because based on the feedback you get from the decision-making that you have done and the strategy that you are currently executing based on the information that you had, you can be able to see where there are shortfalls, and it will necessitate going back to the beginning to get additional sources of information to enhance your current strategy to make sure that it comes up to the standard to enable the firm survive its current situation. So that, in a nutshell, is the marketing information intelligence system. Now, when we talk about the marketing information intelligence system, we are getting a lot of information that we are turning into usable form. But it's not enough to turn this information into a usable form. We need to let the information influence our decision making. And that brings us to the next stage of our discussion, which is about research and decision making. So in linking research to decision making, we are saying that all the global marketing research that we do should, in one way or another, inform the decisions that we take with regard to our global marketing strategy. Now, when it comes to marketing research, a lot of firms are very eager to conduct marketing research in their domestic markets because they know its relevance when it comes to marketing to the domestic populace. However, when it comes to global marketing activities, some firms have still not fully understood the gravity of marketing research in that arena. So they only tend to make great efforts to conduct marketing research when they are in the initial stages of performing their global marketing activity, where they are now trying to find an appropriate market to enter into, where they are trying to put together the necessary strategy to help them successfully expand into that market or enter the market. But for most firms, because they do not appreciate the gravity of marketing research, tend to stop conducting any form of research once they successfully enter the market and set up shop. And that is why we are emphasizing the link between marketing research and decision making. Because the decision making does not stop once you enter the market, it continues. And in that case, the marketing research must also continue and not stop. That's why you realize that a lot of companies and organizations have a separate unit or department dedicated solely towards R&D. Because research is very important to the survival and the maintenance of the firm's competitive advantage in their industry. So marketing research has to start the process of global marketing and continue to inform the process as the firm enters the foreign market and sets up shop to operate, right? So there are major decision phases throughout the global marketing process that marketing research can inform. Like I said, it's not just relevant when you are entering the market or when you are hoping to set up shop in a particular market. It has to continue. And in continuing with your research throughout the process, there are specific kinds of information that you need at different phases of the global marketing process that will influence your decision making for the better. So let's look at the different phases and some of the information that you need at each phase. So for instance, in deciding whether you want to internationalize at all or enter a particular market at all, you first of all need to see the opportunities that there are in the different markets. And you can't know this information offhand. You need to conduct research to be able to come by this information. And you also need to be able to understand the commitment of the management to this internationalization process that you want to embark on. Again, you can't just come by it off the top of your head. You need to do research to be able to obtain this information. We also need to look into the competitiveness of the firm compared with the local and international competitors in the markets that you are hoping to enter into. Once again, such information is not available offhand. You have to embark on an active information search to be able to get information that will give you concrete facts about whether or not your organization is strong enough to compete with the local and international competitors in the market you're trying to enter into. And you also need to look into the domestic market opportunities versus the international market opportunities. Perhaps it may not be wise at the moment to go international, or the best time to go international may be now. You can't tell whether going international is the right thing for you or not as an organization unless you do research to ascertain. Michael, please speak up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Just a quick one. Is there a difference between deciding to internationalize and entering the foreign market?
They are the same.
Okay, all right.
Yes, please.
I see it at different places. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Sometimes they are used synonymously because when you go international, you are entering a foreign market, a market that is alien from yours.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Michael.
Madam.
Yes.
Yeah, this one. Let me break protocol.
Oh, please.
So, yeah. And what is entering into foreign market, internationalize, and what's the difference between them and globalization?
Okay, so internationalization has to do with a fewer number of foreign markets.
Okay.
Whereas globalization is like seeing the whole globe or the whole world as one market.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Okay, so the next phase we can talk about is deciding which markets to enter. And again, they need research to ascertain this. Because we are sitting here in Ghana, if we are choosing to enter Romania, for instance, there's no way we can know the political risks in Romania, or the trade barriers in Romania, or the nature of the local competition there. We have to embark on an active information set. We have to do research to be able to understand what is happening in the Romanian market with regard to their trade policies, the legal and political situation there, even the socio-cultural situation, before we can be able to decide whether or not it's an appropriate market for us to enter into. The same goes for deciding how to enter the foreign market. Very soon we'll learn about the entry modes and strategies. And you will see that deciding to enter a foreign market is based on a number of factors, some of which you cannot fully determine without having done extensive research to appreciate, including the behavior of potential intermediaries. You may not even know the kinds of intermediaries that are available to you in that market until you embark on an information search. Also, in designing the global marketing program, you cannot be able to properly design a program that you can tell to a high degree of certainty would work in the market you are entering into if you have not done research to obtain a fair idea of the variables that are at play in that market. Once you have an understanding of the variables, you can be able to put together an appropriate strategy that you can tell to a large extent will fairly succeed in the market. And finally, implementing and controlling the global marketing program, again, like I said, relies on a consistent supply of marketing information because implementation and control go hand in hand. While you are implementing your global marketing strategy, you need to be controlling to see if things are going well or not. If things are not going well, you need to be able to understand why. And again, through marketing research, you can be able to pinpoint perhaps what is causing the strategy that you are currently implementing to not go as planned. And with that information, you will be able to proffer a solution as to how to get the strategy to work better. And that is why we say that the information intelligence system is a cyclical one. It's an iterative one. You keep going back and forth with a consistent flow of information that is consistently influencing your global marketing strategy and your decision making throughout the process. So that is it for the global marketing process and how information influences each and every level of it. So based on that, we are saying that global marketing requires both secondary data as well as primary data. Now, this secondary or primary data can either originate internally from within the firm or externally from the market, like we have said earlier, from the micro or macro environment. And all these come together to facilitate decision making. Now, very soon we'll talk about the different types of data and how to come by them. Now, as a rule, no primary research should be done without first searching for relevant secondary information. I take it again. No primary research should be done without first searching for relevant secondary information. Can someone tell us why? Why shouldn't we go looking for primary information before we go for secondary information? Sally, can you please speak up?
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you need to have some insight before you go gathering information.
Excellent point.
And in gathering that insight, secondary information is very relevant. So, for instance, before Kasapreko decided to go to Nigeria, they would have gathered insight and heard either people talking about it, or somebody has written something about it, or there's some other information that they would have gathered before commissioning a market research company to do a deep dive of that insight in order to establish whether it might be profitable for them to internationalize or not.
Excellent. So if at the secondary stage, they do not find anything worth looking further into, the organization can save themselves the resources that they would have expended in embarking on a primary information search that perhaps wouldn't have yielded anything, right? Then, like you said, simply having the end in mind before commencing. Can you please throw more light? Dela?
Hello, Doc.
Yes, can you please throw more light on what you just said? Simply having the end in mind before commencing.
Yeah, basically, as part of your strategy, what I think is what you intend to achieve as a company before you start to commence any activities towards that. So like making sure the second, that's basically my understanding.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And that makes perfect sense as well. So the secondary stage of gathering information will help you to have a fair idea of whether or not this thing, like I said, is worth pursuing at all. And once you are able to do that, like Saliu said, commissioning a further primary information set would make more practical sense in terms of time and cost. So in essence, secondary data should be used whenever it is available and appropriate, because it will help you to a large extent to define the problem that you have, and to a large extent determine whether or not the research objectives that you have can be achieved the way you want them to. Ms. Ajwa is saying, what if the area you want to research has not been done before? Exactly. So that is why we are saying that secondary data should be your first stop. So if you comb through the entire sources of secondary data that you believe are relevant to your decision making, and you don't find anything, you do not have a choice than to go on a primary data or information stage. That's why we are saying in most cases, secondary sources cannot provide all the information that you need. And like you're asking, in some cases, they do not provide any information at all. So the company does not have a choice than to go ahead and commission a primary information search or primary data search. Michael, please speak up.
Yes, so madam, if there isn't any secondary data, wouldn't it be advisable then to actually also do sort of a small research, a sort of a secondary research, instead of doing the
R&D?
When you do it yourself and there's nothing there before and you are doing it yourself from scratch, it's actually primary research.
Okay. So whether you are doing it on a small scale or
large scale, it's still primary research because it is being done for a specific purpose. It's not something that someone has done for another purpose that you are going to take.
Okay then, thank you.
Great, you're welcome, Michael. Okay, so like I said earlier, you need information from within the firm, which we refer to as internal data, and then externally from the micro and macro environment. At the same time, you also need primary data. And primary data is data that is collected for a specific purpose. And then secondary data is data that has been collected from other purposes that you are utilizing for your purpose. So you can use these 4 types of data in these 4 categories, right, to help you to be able to ascertain whether or not to enter a market, how to enter a market, what implementation strategy you should use, what entry modes you should use. All these decisions can be done using these 4 categories of data. So let's see an example. We are going to use the 4-way split approach, right, to be able to answer the following 2 questions. Yes, Mr. Samatano, please speak up.
Madam.
Yes, sir.
On the secondary and the primary data issue,
yes,
I think most often than not,
yes,
you have a secondary data when going into a foreign country.
That's true.
Because you have their GDP, inflation rate, exchange rate, all those things. They are all data for you.
Yes.
Yes. So that based on that, you can use it to get your specific information that you want.
Yes, sir. That's true. Thank you very much for that submission. Okay. So like I was saying, these 4 categories can be used throughout the global marketing process for your decision making, right? And we are going to see how these 4 categories are applied in decision making concerning the following 2 questions. The first one being, is there a market for the firm's product A in country B? And then if yes, how large is this market? And what is the possible market share for our firm? So let's look at this diagram for a moment. We are going to read it from top to bottom because like we said, you have to look for secondary data before you go in search of primary data. So at the secondary data level, we have our problem in the middle, which is talking about whether or not there's a market for our product in the foreign country, how large that market is, and whether it's possible for us to gain market share. Now, looking at the internal sources of secondary data, we can see that to be able to answer this question, we can look at things within the firm, like our size, compared to the foreign market. Are there bigger firms manufacturing products in that market already, which will make it fairly difficult for us to compete? And based on our size, is our product line good enough to compete with the product lines of the other companies already operating in that market? And we also need to look at our financial situation, like finance-wise. Do we have the capital to be able to make this move, to sell our products in this foreign market? Even if we can't, do we have the capital to be able to enter the market in a way that will help us gain market share? I remember when Glow was trying to enter the Ghanaian market, they had so much financial muscle that I think they did not go deep into the other aspects of the environment and how it could affect their operation within the Ghanaian market. And I think they are suffering from it to date because even though they had the financial muscle, they were not able to gain significant market share, regardless of how much they invested into their operations in the Ghanaian market. So that is a set of examples of internal data, right, from secondary sources that can influence whether or not we believe our product will do well in the market and how much of that market we feel we can acquire once we enter. But looking at secondary data again, from the external point of view, we can see that micro and macro environmental issues also come into play. At the macro environmental level, just like Mr. Samwatano said some moments ago, we can think about things like GDP, the stability of the currency of the country that we are going into, the level of inflation. All these things will affect whether or not we will be able to survive and whether or not we can even successfully enter the market. We can also talk about micro environmental factors at the industry level. The growth patterns of the sector. Is the sector growing? or it's constricting? Are people leaving, or the sector is so attractive that more people are coming in, right? Which will lead us into the analysis of imports and the characteristics of our competitors. All these things are secondary sources of information from the internal and external sources that can affect the way we even enter a market and how we operate within that market in order to survive. Now, coming down, we can see there is the primary data level, which also has internal and external sources. And with regard to primary data from internal sources, we can talk about our strengths and weaknesses. And with regard to entering a particular foreign market, you cannot be able to tell what your strengths and weaknesses are until you are able to ascertain, using secondary data, the state of the market and what you have that perhaps can help you enter the market. So once you're able to ascertain the state of the market at the micro level and the macro level, and your current state as a firm, you can be able to comfortably determine your strengths and weaknesses and do good benchmarking. Because, okay, so if the competitors in that market are aggressive, right? If there are a number of competitors in that market and they're all doing very well, it means that compared to us who do not have perhaps the financial strength that our competitors have, we have a weakness there. But if in comparison, based on the industry data that we got, there are very few competitors, or perhaps there's only one competitor and they do not have that much of a significant market share, then that puts us as an advantage, being a strength, right? So we are able to do comparisons at the corporate level, at the product level, right? To be able to determine whether we have strengths or weaknesses with regard to the foreign market we are trying to enter into and the level of competition that exists in that sector. Without secondary data, we would not be able to know anything about our markets to be able to do this benchmarking that we are talking about. And that emphasizes the importance of obtaining secondary data before we talk about embarking on obtaining primary data. Now, in obtaining primary data from the external sources as well, we can talk about data specifically relating to our competitors. So now that you know that they exist and what they are doing, you can commission specific research into the actual strategies that they are using. Because your secondary data told you that they are there, they have this level of market share. So they are now on your radar, and you need to go deeper into the strategies that they are using to be able to inform your strategy for entering the market. And once you know about the economic situation from the secondary data, you can now think about the end customers, because if there's high inflation in the country, then it means that the purchasing power of the people perhaps may not be that strong to be able to afford what you're trying to sell, depending on how expensive it is. If in terms of the GNP, like we learned last lecture with the Indian market, you know the kind of customers that you're dealing with, and based on their GNP, they cannot afford you selling a cell phone that is worth $1,000 and above, because the GNP in itself is up to the cost of that phone. So already you can be able to tell the nature of your end customers before you enter the market based on the secondary data that you have got. And with primary data, you can go deeper to be able to understand, based on the inflation level and the GNP level, the kind of substitutes that they have to your product. And all that is going to inform your strategy. At the same time, too, by understanding the macro economic situation, again, based on the case we learned about in class last week with Apple and the Indian market, the regulations in that environment do not allow them to import in a friendly manner. So the tariffs are so high that it limits their ability to import from their foreign market. And the regulations also make it difficult for them to open up their own shops in the place. So in that case, they have to use intermediaries. So knowing that they cannot import into the country at a low cost and do not have the opportunity to set up their own shop, they have to do primary research to identify the kinds of intermediaries that are there and which ones will be relevant for them to use to sell their product, right? So these are various ways by which external and internal data sources, as well as primary and secondary data sources, interplay with each other and inform the decision-making of the global marketer. So all the decision-making that the global marketer does is informed in a cyclical manner by all these sources of information. And they are not something that you can just sit down as a marketer and hope will come to you. you have to consciously set them up. You have to consciously set up the processes and the structures to ensure that all this information is available to you in a timely manner for you to be able to take appropriate decisions that will positively influence your global marketing strategy. So that is it for linking research to decision making. I don't know if anyone has a question before we go ahead. Okay. Since no one has a question, we'll continue. So moving on, I want us to delve deep into the issue of secondary data and primary data. And secondary data comes about as a result of secondary research, whereas primary data comes about as a result of primary research. So we'll take each of them one after the other, and then we will break them down, starting from secondary research. So when we talk about secondary research, we are referring to research that involves gathering and utilizing information that has already been collected for other purposes and is thus readily available. So in that case, you can just sit at your desk and go on a search, either by making phone calls or sending emails or browsing the internet or having your assistant visit a public library or an institution to request for information from their databases or their repositories. Hence, another name for secondary research being desk research. And this type of research is very attractive to most people, apart from the fact that it serves as a great starting point for research before we go into more resource-intensive primary research. It is less expensive and less time-consuming. Because if you are trying to enter a foreign market and you want to commission a primary research, you have to do it in the country that you want to enter into. And that comes with its own resource and cost implications. However, with secondary research, you can do it from anywhere that you are. And most of the time, the information has already been collected for you. In fact, all of the time, secondary research is readily available, depending on the problem you're dealing with. So it is less expensive and less time-consuming to come by this kind of data, right? And once you are in your home country and you are conducting secondary research, it has this benefit of giving you objectivity, because you are not in the foreign market being influenced by the factors and all the multiplicity of issues that are going on there. But you can stand at an objective perspective and look in on the situation within the market to objectively decide whether or not it is even worth your time. Hence, the low costs and amount of time associated with data collection when it comes to secondary research, because you don't have to make a move to the foreign market you want to enter into before you commission a primary research project, before you can obtain information about the market. The secondary research does that for you. So, secondary research, we have said a lot of positive things about it. However, it also comes with its own challenges. The first challenge being the non-availability of data, which a number of our colleagues have raised, including our sister, Ms. Ajua, among others. In many developing countries like our context, secondary data is very scarce and difficult to come by. You will only be able to obtain what you can get from the media. But unlike in places like Europe, where there are actual research agencies consistently conducting research on the market, on the economy, and the changing situations in the market, where you can get ready access to information. In developing countries like ours, it's very difficult to come by that information. Most of the organizations in our context, yes, Salil, please speak up.
Yes, on the non-availability of data, the University of Ghana alone churns out about 20 to 30,000 undergraduates every year.
Yeah.
These undergraduates, as part of the requirements for the award of their degrees, conduct long essays.
Okay, not all of them.
Not all of them. So yes. let's even say 10,000.
Okay.
That would be too much.
Yeah, because right now a lot of them are running away from the long essay. They are choosing to do combined majors. Yes.
I see. But I mean, it's a wealth of information out there.
It is.
how is, because oftentimes we hear this debate of lack of coordination between academia and industry, and the fact that a lot of the academic researches that are done would end up collecting data.
Yeah.
Couldn't the universities position themselves as a source of a wealth of such information for organizations to tap into when they are conducting secondary research?
Yeah, yeah, they can. I remember some time ago, UGBS reached out to a number of the industries because they wanted to come out with a business report, an annual business report, to provide this kind of intelligence on changes in the market and stuff. And we had this roundtable workshop with a number of the industry representatives. And they kept telling us that our students always do research in areas that are of no interest to them and areas that do not necessarily influence their strategy. So we were like, okay, how about industry gives us, like on an annual basis, emerging issues that they want our students to research into? So I think by the time they ended that agreement, they decided, okay, these are currently the pertinent areas that are relevant to us. So I remember they came up with an edition of the report. And I remember at that time it was very bulky. And they sent copies to industry players to give us feedback on the report and how they felt about it and what we could do to make it better. Saliu, there was no response from any industry representative. They went ahead.
It's because industry don't have a lot of time.
Good. They went ahead and did a second one. The response was the same lukewarm response. And ultimately they just stopped. In fact, the office has even been closed down. So currently the students just research in areas that they think are of interest to them.
Okay, so maybe additionally, one insight that academia also is not aware is because in industry, so same way they are accusing academia of conducting research in areas that they don't have an interest in, industry also doesn't have the benefit or doesn't see the value in academic research.
Good. Now the truth comes out.
Yeah, it's a fact. There are a lot of people that would decide to debate, but that is the fact. A lot of people in industry do not see the value of academic research. But what they are forgetting is whatever that you are implementing, in whatever industry you find yourself in, has a theoretical base. And it is that theoretical base that would establish you and make you a lot more grounded in what you're doing. So it's a two-way problem, not just academia to industry, but there is an industry.
Yeah, Della is saying it is political and twisted. I couldn't agree more. Lucy, please speak up.
Madam, you said the report they came up with was bulky. In the industries, when you send such reports, it will take 10 years for them to read.
Of course.
You find ways and means of making, because the person is always trying to make his overheads and stuff, will not have all the time to go and sit down and read the report.
Yeah.
So when he reports to industry, she should make it in a way that when he takes it within three pages or 4 pages, he should be able to understand exactly what you are saying. So you can make it in a table form or make the bulleted points. Then they will come back asking questions for explanation. But if you give me a full stop note of reports, even our own internal reports, Christ, not every single one of them that is read. So,
that's true.
Internal report, companies are generating internal report every hour, every day. There's reports going up and down.
Yeah.
So don't give me such a bulky, please, to be on the shelf.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Thank you.
Also research the industries to know that such a report, they may not be able to get back to us because they cannot have the time to read.
Yeah. Thank you for that submission, Lucy. So Samantha, please speak up.
I think industry not believing in research. That is the more reason why when the foreign companies come in here, they make it big, and you still be struggling down there.
That's true.
Because locally, we think research is waste of money.
It's true.
Most companies.
Very true.
But the foreign ones, when they come, you see them always researching. Yeah. They know everything about their competitor.
That's true.
But most of us don't know anything about competitors.
That's true.
And then when you meet them and you're having discussions, you realize that even if the manager has come into the country for 3 weeks or 3 months, the information that he has, most people in the country don't know anything, because
that's true.
We always believe in, oh, we can do it. Without this, we can do it. And then, like Lucy said, when the report is also given to them, they don't sit down.
That's true.
And implementing it is also a problem. Even when they read it, implementing it, especially when it comes to investing a little bit of money into it so that they can report they've invested. No.
That's true.
Yeah, so very that's our being.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that submission. Very honest. Chief, please speak up.
All right, Doc. For me, I agree with what they've said. A little thing I would say is that the academic is, UG to find a very innovative way to capture the attention of this industry. I think still there is a way out. Of course, if you bring them a voluminous report that contains so much, they wouldn't read, and especially when it is put together from other industries.
That's true.
I am sitting here thinking that if UG would call industry players, let's say those in the banking sector, you call them after the report. After getting all the report, you call them, make a power slideshow, and give them the pertinent point, the salient point coming. You would have kept their attention.
Yeah.
I think that the approach perhaps may not be just bring it and sending it to them. All right, dialoguing with them under such a gathering, using PowerPoint illustration and stuff like that, may get them to think about it.
Yeah.
May get them to think about it rather than say you just produce the research, give it to them like that. That one, nobody. The CEOs are busy. Yeah. So maybe you should look at the approach of disseminating or dispensing the information to them. Thank you.
That's true. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for that submission. So moving on, we can also talk about the reliability of data, right? Again, the information may be available, but is it reliable, right? Data collection procedures can affect the accuracy of the data that you end up with. And most of the time in Ghana, several governmental institutions have been accused of padding their reports. Recently, someone was telling me that the COVID-19 figures that they have been releasing in Ghana are padded. They are withholding some, and they are leaving some. For whatever reason, I do not know. The person seems to think that it is for political reasons because you are in an election year and all that. These are ways in which we can see that the reliability of certain data, even though they are coming from sources that are supposed to be reliable, are being called into question. And that again is another challenge of secondary research. Some of the sources of this secondary research may not be trustworthy or may not be deemed reliable. We can also talk about data classification. In many countries, the data is perhaps reported in too broad of a manner or from more of a macro environmental perspective than the micro level. Yes, Lucy, thank you for confirming, right? So this information is given, but it's only telling us about national figures and macro level figures, whereas we need more information at a micro level to be able to take actual decisions on the ground. And in Ghana here, a lot of that information is available. You can get a lot of macro level information, looking at our GDP and inflation rates and all that. But when it comes to micro level information, especially about Ghanaian consumers, this information is quite difficult to come by, right? And even if you come by it, in terms of classification, it's difficult to use at a micro level for decision making. Mr. Samatano, did you have something to say? Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry.
Yes, please. Thank you, sir.
He's suffering from old age.
And your fault.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so next we can also talk about comparability of the data. International marketers often like to compare data from different countries, right? But you realize that the secondary data, because it is collected by different people for different purposes on different levels, micro or macro, sometimes you may obtain different information that is not comparable based on the way that the information was gathered. So you can get different reports or different databases, but perhaps the way the information has been collected, you cannot be able to compare. Say if you want to enter 2 foreign markets and you are comparing between those 2 markets, which one is a better option for you to enter into? And then you get a report on one of the countries, but it's a macroeconomic report. And the other one is more of a microeconomic report. It will be very difficult for you to be able to compare the characteristics of those 2 markets using these 2 reports, because from the onset, they are collected on different levels. So you will not be able to readily compare the conditions in both markets to ascertain which one is a better option for you. So these are examples of the challenges we face in secondary research as marketers. However, this one was from the external perspective, looking at secondary research that we gather from external sources, being macro and micro environmental sources. However, when we come to internal sources, we have various sources of secondary data. Regardless of the challenges that the secondary data may have, internally, there's information that we have that we can strongly rely on, especially when it comes to the characteristics of the firm and our strengths and weaknesses, to be able to counter the threats that we face in the foreign market and then take advantage of the opportunities that we have identified there. We can look at things like our sales records, right? And these ones are very important, especially once you have entered into the market, because you need to be able to make sure that you are meeting your sales targets. And this is what my friends in the banking sector call the KPIs. If the KPIs are not adding up, you need to be able to start questioning your strategy, especially when it comes to the foreign market, right? So you're looking at your total sales, your weekly records, your monthly records, and so on. You don't need to wait until the end of the quarter, right, to be able to keep tabs on the sales and how they are progressing. You can also look at sales by country, especially as a marketer who is operating in different markets. The sales by country will tell you to a large degree how much you have been able to penetrate the different markets, and whether or not the way your sales are going in those markets, it is worth continuing your international operations in those markets. We can also go specifically by sales of product. Perhaps your organization is selling more than one type of product in these foreign markets. And you need to know the product that is doing well, which one that is not, so that you can be able to make a firm decision on whether to continue on with that product or end it. In Ghana here, Coca-Cola has tried over the years severally to introduce a water brand and has failed woefully all the time. Dasani came, it failed badly because sales were down. They did everything they could to increase sales, but the sales were just not rising, and they had to scrap it. Then they came along with Bonaqua. Again, Bonaqua was on the market for some time. Still, the sales volumes were not as much as they wanted it to be, and they had to withdraw it. And for a long time, Coca-Cola gave up on introducing a water brand onto the Ghanaian market. However, they did not stop their research. They kept their tabs on the market. The intelligence was still flowing. So the moment they saw an opportunity to go in and swoop on Baltic and buy it, they didn't mince words, they didn't waste time. They quickly went in, bought Baltic, and now finally Coca-Cola has a water brand as part of their product line in Ghana, right? So that is an example of how sales volumes by product and by market segment can cause a particular foreign company to stop selling a product in a given market, depending on how they are performing. Because Dasani is no longer sold in Ghana, but it is sold in other foreign markets. So we realized that the information that they kept gathering internally from their different operations in the different markets that they were operating in gave them the ammunition to reorganize their strategies and their implementation to make sure that those that were not doing well and deserved to be scrapped were scrapped. Those that were doing well that they could keep on, they So that is it by sales. We can also talk about sales volume by type of channel distribution. It is possible for a firm to calculate the effectiveness of the different channels that they use. For instance, a company that is trying to sell in the foreign market can decide to just go by using a subsidiary in that market, which they have set up by themselves. Or they'll just use a foreign distributor. So they will not have to commit so many resources to set up a subsidiary before they can sell. They'll just send the products to a distributor who is already set up there and ask the person to distribute on their behalf. So you realize in Ghana here, there are a number of products that are being sold, and in the advert you see so industries or enterprises is the sole distributor of this product in Ghana. Telefonica is the sole distributor for a number of cell phone brands in Ghana here. And that is an example of how the type of channel distribution can be checked by sales volume. Because perhaps when the company starts using the sole distributor and the sales are going well, they see that it is an opportunity for them to sell even more when they come into the market fully and set up their own subsidiary. So by gauging the sales volume of the different intermediaries that they are using to sell their products, they can tell whether or not it's even worth it to continue using that mode of entry for their product, or switch to another mode that may perhaps give them more returns or benefits of selling their product. They can also use secondary data based on their communication mix, right? Firms have a lot of historical data on the effects of their advertising campaigns, their sponsorships, their direct mail on sales as a guide to the likely effectiveness of future communication expenditure plans. So for instance, if a company is selling in a particular foreign market and they invest a lot in television adverts, and they also invest in putting up billboards as well as celebrity endorsements, and they are checking the yield of each of these forms of marketing communication, and they realize that perhaps the television advertisements are not bringing as much as the billboards are, or they are not as effective as the billboards and the celebrity endorsements, they may decide to scrap the TV adverts and go solely with the billboards and the celebrity endorsements. Again, I use Glow as an example. To date, I don't see why Glow is still using celebrity endorsements in Ghana, because from where I sit, based on my small secondary research, the celebrity endorsements have not really done much for the brand in the country in terms of helping them to gain a footing and then expand their market share. But they are still extensively using celebrity endorsements. At the same time, too, they are doing a lot of promotions by giving free data. I don't know which one is more effective at the moment, but to me, I think they should stop the celebrity endorsements entirely and rather focus on perhaps the promotions to get more people to sign on to their brand. I don't know if anyone shares a contrary view. Or do you agree? Sally, please speak up.
Look, Glow, I think it was a failure of leadership and management. That is what led the dwindling of the fortunes of Glow.
Yeah.
At commercial launch, I was working with Glow. I was in charge of the 25 shops that they opened nationwide.
Wow.
At launch in 2011, they were the first telco to introduce standardization when it comes to the service touch points.
Yeah.
None of the telcos then had standardized look and feel of the shops.
Yeah.
Now, at launch, everything that they had in terms of SIM acquisition, in the first 2 months, we acquired over a million wow. customers.
Yeah.
By the 5th month, we had hit the 2 million mark, and that was where the issue started happening. Again, it's also a cultural issue because anytime you go talking to them about how completely different the Ghana market is from Nigeria, they tell you that, oh, it has worked in Nigeria, it would work in Ghana.
Oh, so they have an ethnocentric orientation.
Exactly. What started the tipping point was they introduced a product called Glow Gista. Yeah. Apparently, it was a very popular a product in Nigeria, and they got a lot of revenue out of it.
Yeah.
I was the head of the UAT team. Yeah. When we did the UAT, I specifically told them that, look, this product will not work in Ghana.
Yeah.
Then they said, what do I know, including my boss? This thing has been popular in Nigeria.
Sorry, what is UAT?
Thank you for asking, Mr. Samansan. I was going to ask once he was done.
You're welcome, madam.
Sorry, what did you say?
He said, what is UAT or AUT?
So user acceptance test. So you need to test the product internally, especially for the service teams.
Yeah.
So that you would give feedback before you launch the product commercially. Because there's no point in you taking the product commercial without you actually testing to see whether the product works or not.
Exactly.
So it was a one-way traffic into the product. You can't come out. I told them it's not good. You need to give customers an exit out if they don't want it, because you can't force them to use that particular way. So they went ahead and launched. On the day of launch, they employed a lot of street canvassers. And surprisingly, one of the canvassers, the canvassers, they are not really loyal. They can work for Glow today, tomorrow they'll be working for Airtel Tigo, the next moment they are working for. So one of them told them that, look, this product, people will not buy.
Yes.
I was standing there just observing. They asked him, why wouldn't people buy? And he repeated the same feedback that I gave them. And they said, look, we are going to market. The product is launched. They made a huge noise about it. On the first day, we got 30,000 customers subscribing to the product. By the third day, we had gotten 100,000. Then the customers realized that they were not getting value, because in this environment, customers are multi-SIMing. Chief Tano alone has a Glow SIM, he has a MTN SIM, he has a Vodafone SIM, he has an Airtel Tigo SIM.
Yeah.
They realized they were not getting value from the service and wanted to downgrade. Wow. And they realized that they couldn't downgrade.
Yeah.
Within a week, they had gotten over 500,000 customers porting out because of this challenge. And that was where things started going down for them. And the people were not listening. That was their issue. So the endorsement that they are doing, it hasn't been working for them. And it will not work for them in the future. Exactly. I don't know why they still can't see this.
Exactly. But Salil, you've raised a key issue, which really lends credence to what we discussed earlier about linking research to decision making. Because here, from what Salil said, clearly the research the secondary data was telling them otherwise. But they totally ignored it and went ahead. So the decision making did not reflect what the secondary data was telling them. And hence their demise. So thank you for that submission, Salil. It really throws a lot of light on all that we are discussing. Della, please speak up.
Yes, I work with a firm from Nigeria.
Okay.
I just want to know, what is this thing about Nigerians trying to more or less export their culture or their way of doing things in Ghana?
Yeah.
Because we are also more or less doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know why that. Do they feel superior?
Can we explain it from a cultural perspective? Yes.
Look, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's the cultural orientation, and the masculinity in them does not allow them to, listen to your opinion. More so, they are your superior. They think they are right.
Yeah, I think so too. Della, do you agree?
Yeah, because virtually, I don't know if any of my colleagues work with their banks or any company from.
I think we have a few Zenith Bank. Yeah.
I don't know. Any the same thing. You complain, we don't do it in our home country. It's not done there. You know, and you have to go by their way.
Their way or no way. Very masculine. Salil, can you please speak up?
Yes. Okay. So our brothers in Nigeria and our sisters in Nigeria, it's the level of orientation and cultural orientation.
Yeah.
They feel that we are not too aggressive.
Yeah.
When it comes to the way we work and the way we carry ourselves around.
Yeah.
If you take Lagos, for instance, to be able to survive in Lagos, you got to be aggressive, regardless of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
If you look at the market in Nigeria, in whatever industry, whatever sector, you have 140 to 180 million people competing for the same amount and level of resources.
That's true.
So for them, that level of aggression is part of their DNA, and that's how they grow up, because they are like China. You need to, show something distinct in order to be able to survive in that environment.
Yeah.
Now, when they leave Nigeria and they go into other markets, and particularly in Ghana, they haven't been, in the banking industry, they were the ones who forced the Ghanaian banks to start closing at 5 and 10. But beyond that, they feel that you have to be and demonstrate that level of aggressiveness in order to make you competitive. We keep telling them that, look, aggression is good, but the market is different.
Yeah.
So if you do not appreciate the nuances of the Ghanaian culture, so the Ghanaian man will be standing there, will be laughing at you. Oh, will you buy my product? Yeah, I'll buy it. But you turn back and you say, the guy is not going to buy. He's entertaining you. But so they are thinking that, that same, because we are Africans and West Africans and we speak English, so our nuances are the same. That is what they are missing out.
Yeah.
When they were going to train us, they actually took us to Nigeria. So we go and learn how they do customer service. And I was appalled.
Yeah.
If you see how they talk to their, customers in Nigeria, you would feel as if in Ghana, you can't talk to anybody like that.
True.
So I kept telling them, I said, you are given, and most of the people that they train, with the exception of those of us who had some work experience, were people who were fresh out of school. Ooh. And I kept telling them, you are giving them the wrong orientation. When they come back home, we will bleed.
Yeah.
And as Della said, they don't listen. They feel because what has worked in their market would work in every other market. So that global mindset, they move the companies out, but their mindset isn't global. It's still local.
That's true. That's true. Thank you, Della and Saliu, for sharing. Lucy, please, do you want to speak?
Yeah, there's another aspect everybody has lost. The Nigerians feel that they always have to be on top. So when they are taking advice from you, mean that they are not performing well. So if you work with a Nigerian in your office, you have to be very careful because you find ways and means of getting your job. I've done work with some before. Yeah. So they always want to portray that they know better, they are doing better, so that you always see them as the best person at top.
Yeah.
At the top.
They always have to be superior.
Taking advice from you means that they are becoming less superior. So they want to always be the one in the leading role. So they will not take your advice. They want to push it. So they want to push whatever they have down your throat for you to do it the way they want it. And I think it's high time they start learning that it's not everything that they do that will survive in any of the markets. So especially in Ghana, things are different.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Lucy. Yeah, so that is it for the internal sources of data. Let's talk about the external sources of secondary data now. So for the external sources of secondary data, we can talk about a very basic method of finding international business information to begin with, which is public repositories. There are so many of these repositories all around the world. We have practitioner repositories, we have academic repositories, then we have libraries, right? Or even university libraries, like one of our colleagues mentioned, the University of Ghana online repository called UG Space. It has a lot of information, including all the thesis of the master's students in the University of Ghana, and it has a wealth of information, like our colleague rightly said. And the internet can also help in the search for data sources as well, because there are thousands of databases that are hosted on the internet that are sources of varied forms of information from various disciplines, which we will see very soon. Sadio, please, your hand is still up. Is there something you wanted to say?
Sorry, let me know.
Okay. All right.
He's also from Odin.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, the internet has a wealth of data sources we can benefit from. There are also electronic databases that carry specifically marketing information, some of which are hosted on the internet that you can have easy access to. And they provide a lot of information with regards to academic and trade press updates that tell us a lot of statistics and facts about international trade, as well as new developments, right? But the cost compared with the data quality is a major factor, which influences the decision of companies to rely on these multiple sources of information, including the databases and the repositories. So it depends on how much an organization or an information seeker trusts a particular source and the amount of money or costs involved in gaining access to this source, because most of these repositories and databases require some form of resources in exchange for the information that they provide. So let's look, for instance, at one of those online databases, which is the Euromonitor International. Now, Euromonitor International is a European research agency, and they conduct all forms of market research in Europe. So you can gain access to different reports and information briefs about different markets in Europe and the various variables in those markets. When you sign on to their platform, you can gain access to some reports that are free that will send to you annually. And then they'll also send you adverts of reports that they have developed that unfortunately you may have to pay for to obtain. So quickly, let me take you to their page and then let's see the build up of the page. Please indicate when you can see the screen. Please, can you see the browser?
Yes.
Good. So this is the Euromonitor International site. And like I said, some of the information is readily available for free, others you have to pay for. So I've just opened the store and you can see that they have categorized all the information based on, first of all, country. Please, can we see? So they have a total of 210 countries, which you can get information on, right, from this repository alone. But I don't see Ghana here. I see Nigeria. I see Kenya, right? Okay, Ghana is here. Yeah, so Ghana is part of the 210. So let's click on Ghana and see what reports we can find. Okay, so they have reports on households in Ghana, retailing in Ghana, home care in Ghana, soft drinks, our economy, finance and trade, income and expenditure, sustainability, business dynamics, hot drinks, packaged food, consumer health. Please, can you see this? These
yes, ma'am.
They even have a report on tissue and hygiene.
It's a big
Interesting.
Big business. And you see the amounts they are charging for each report. In the thousands of euros.
Yeah, for the report. It's big business.
Tissue is a big business, huh?
Yeah, and they have a whole report on it. For 1,625
pounds. Hey.
Yeah, pounds. Sorry, I thought it was euros. Pounds. That is a lot of money.
They have alcohol. Let me see the alcohol one, Doc.
Alcoholic.
They have a yes. Let me see that.
For 1,375 pounds.
They should keep it.
Right, so this is the executive summary of the report. So the report analyzes the alcoholic drinks market in Ghana, giving us socioeconomic trends, logistics and infrastructure, legislation, taxation, and duty levies. So by the time a company accesses this database and they're selling alcoholic drinks, they will have a fair idea of the terrain in Ghana when it comes to alcoholic drinks. And this is just from one database, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get it for as many as 210 countries. And they've even made it easier for you. They've categorized by what? Industry. They've also categorized by what? Company.
We don't even have something like this in Ghana for ourselves.
At all. At all. So I'm asking myself.
Ivan, let's create one.
I pray you can, because we need it badly.
No, but is there a market for it in Ghana? Ghanaians sometimes you don't even want to read about whatever we are going to.
Forget about that.
There is a huge market for information in Ghana. Huge market.
Even from outside,
Yeah, sure.
want to come and invest.
No,
for
for people who are very positive, who are willing to £1,000.
Yeah, who
for Ghanaians living in Ghana who are willing to pay £1,000 for a report.
Exactly.
Oh, madam, but
guys,
your information in there.
No, not £1,000. Your charging will be localized. Your charging will be localized. But there's
the thing is that a lot to go into, bringing up this report. It has to be credible, because when people come here and then they buy the report and they use it, doesn't work for them, they're not coming back again.
Exactly.
So it has to be reports that exactly right. They are getting value for.
Yeah. Right.
Charlie, I like you. I like your submission.
Okay, let's look at another one. This one is marketresearch.com, right? And this one again categorizes based on publishers. So they categorize the different information provision agencies, right? So here we have everything from ABMRG to R Cluster to the Asia Pacific InfoServe, right? To Allied Development Corps. They have Barnes Reports, Berg Insights, Childwise. They have a number of companies from all over the world, all of whom produce these reports, right? And like we said, there's no Ghanaian market research company in here. Not a single one. All of them are foreign, right? I don't even see Millward Brown. And Millward Brown does very well in the West African sub-region, right? Okay, so let's pick one and open. Which one should we open? Let's see. Let's do American Affluence Research Center. The word affluence is of interest to me. Lucy, can you can please speak up?
I think it's gone. What I was trying to say is that the research center for the University of Ghana, those trying to get the industries to line up, they can come up with something like this. The industries will follow them to buy it.
Yeah. But the companies fund it though, because this is a lot of money.
Although you are selling it to them, so they pay, because the companies pay a lot of money to buy the companies. I know some people pay a lot of money to get this research.
Yeah.
Instead of getting it from individuals in Ghana. So why not? If our information is understanding that they will definitely buy.
Yeah.
When I was starting my long essay, I was trying to research about certain thing about long essay. What I saw was a company that came up saying they write the long essay for me. Will you imagine? It's an American company.
Yeah, that's true.
And the number of pages they write for you, and the number of
all that. Yeah.
And the new company ready to do that. I was interested.
Yeah.
So Lucy, so far, how is it going with them?
I have people who help me. If I make a mistake, somebody correct.
Good question.
Okay, madam, thank you.
That's a good one, Victor. Thank you, Lucy, for sharing. So this is marketresearch.com. I think when you get the chance, you can go through the site and see if there's any market research institution doing things that will be of relevance to your global marketing. But this is another example. Then we have one that is actually has a subsidiary in Ghana, which is AC Nielsen, right? So AC Nielsen Global has a representation here in Ghana, and they are the Gulf House. Please, how many of you know about AC Nielsen's office at the Gulf House? Exactly. People drive by it and they've never even seen the signboard before. The signboard has even actually fallen down.
Oh, AC Nielsen. I know AC Nielsen.
Yeah, at the Gulf House.
Yes, at the Gulf House, yes. They do all this market research.
Exactly.
They did one for Baltic and all that. Yeah, I've seen their work.
So
and it's expensive because we needed we needed to do a facility for a customer, but we needed to be sure if it was something that we want to involve at. So we needed AC Nielsen's report on the the bottled water industry, and it was supposed to pay 15,000 for a report.
Wow.
Yeah. and the customer wasn't willing to.
Good money. That's right.
Yeah.
Look.
Ellen says they also work for her company, right? So the Ghanaian companies who value the information are going in search of it from sources they can trust, like AC Nielsen. Stella, please speak up.
Yeah, I wanted to know if there is CNS RMS.
Stella, please, you were saying.
Yeah, I wanted to know if there is CNS RMS on the list of the companies that do research.
RMS.
Yeah, CNS RMS.
EMS RMS. No, this is what we have in the E column. Can you see?
No, T.
I know of RMS, but not EC.
Oh, okay.
This is the C section. The R section is also here.
T for Tano.
Okay, so TMS. This is the T section.
No, TNS is a local. It's a local. What do you call it? I doubt if they will be listed.
No, they are not listed here at all.
TNS is a. I know TNS.
Oh, okay.
They are local research company.
But don't you think it's Tech Navio subscription? I saw something like that.
We should have.
Let's open it and see.
TNS.
So huh? Tech Navio is a groundbreaking technology advisory and research firm.
TNS, anyway.
So this is them.
Yes, this is them because they are also in Ghana, but they are very big. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so they are here. Tech Navio is here. I've never heard of them before.
Oh,
I don't think that TNS is Tech Navio. I can check the name, but it's not Tech Navio.
So can you confirm and let us know? Because
yeah, let me make.
Why are you down there?
No, I need to call someone. We've done some work with them. I know TNS, but I don't think they are Tech Navio.
Let's check if they are Tech Navio subscription. Unless
okay, you
for sharing.
You don't want to believe in anything from Ghana. Oh, why?
Oh, forget Sally. We'll take him back to
Thank you, Della. Okay, so apart from Nielsen too, we have academic databases, and in fact, oh wow, Ellen says TNS also works for them. Oh, then Ellen, your company really values research.
Yeah, in Nestle, research is priority.
Nestle, see, another multinational. They don't joke with their research. Oh. Data is their liquid gold. Oh? Yeah.
Exactly.
Is that a full meaning? Is that a full meaning of TNS?
I don't know their full name, but on their invoice it says TNS. So
it's always TNS. Yes, I also don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Like they are just TNS, not Tech Navio. I'll get the details.
Okay, I hear you, boss.
Okay, so like I was saying, another one we can talk about are the academic data repositories. So here you can get data in all forms, data in raw form, data in published form, in any way or form at all. You can find that kind of information here. And here they encourage a lot of us academics to publish the data that we use to conduct our research, because we collect the data in bulk, and usually we are only able to glean a few insights to write specific academic papers. So they encourage us to put the data out there so that other people can also access it, but then turn it around and glean all manner of insights to be able to inform their decision making. And Mendeley data is one of the databases that is trusted, that we academics submit all our data to. So it's another good source of information. Now coming more to our local funds in Africa and Ghana, we have institutions like the United Nations and the Africa Development Bank, who also put out reports annually about the state of the economy in Africa and then trade in Africa. So one particular one that I always look to is the African Economic Outlook. And I think I recently downloaded the 2020 version. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly so that we can look at it. Yeah. Okay. So please, can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the 2020 African Economic Outlook, and the focus was on developing Africa's workforce for the future. So they cover a number of issues, right, including, let's go to the table of content, yes. So they cover issues like, oh, sorry, a moment. I want to get to the table of contents. Okay, great. So they are covering issues about Africa's growth in terms of performance, the outlook, and inclusiveness. And they're looking at everything from the macroeconomic performance and prospects in Africa to remittances and foreign domestic investments in terms of financial flows to Africa, the growth potential of Africa, pathways to ending poverty, policy recommendations. They are also talking about education and skills for the workforce of the future in Africa, as well as financial education and skills development. And this report comes out every year. So an organization may subscribe to a report like this just to make sure that at any point in time, they are getting wind of new developments in the African sub-region and to be able to appreciate what is happening with regards to trade in the sub-region so that they can make decisions. Apart from the Africa Development Bank, we also have organizations like the United Nations Trade Organization, who also come up with their own reports every year. This one is the Economic Development in Africa report. This is the 2019 edition. The 2020 edition is yet to come out. And again, the theme for this one is Made in Africa, Rules of Origin for Enhanced Intra-African Trade. And it is by the United Nations, I think, Trade, it's UNCTAD, so United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And in this issue, they covered everything from, let's get to the table of contents. They covered everything from the African Continental Free Trade Area, its challenges and opportunities, breaking down what it means for people who want to do business in Africa. And they also looked at the role of preferential rules of origin in African trade, right? Again, they come to the AFCFTA, talking about regional value chains and rules of origin, right? They also talk about the implementation of rules of origin, right? And then they give their recommendations. So having a report like this coming to your organization every year, which I know a number of organizations subscribe to all these annual reports and economic magazines, will be able to have hands-on information at all times about what is happening generally, at least on a macro level, within the markets that they want to operate in, right? So like I said, there are various sources of external data that we can get. We've already talked about the Euro Monitor International. We've talked about marketresearch.com. We've talked about AC Nielsen. We can also talk about economic publications and magazines like the Business Insider, right? And the 2019 edition of the Business Insider focused on data and its importance, touting it as the new oil, right? And we all know how valuable oil is in the global market. So for data to be referred to as the new oil tells us how important of a role data plays in all our decision-making activities, right? We can also talk about publications like Forbes Africa, which also often gives us a lot of information about development in terms of trade and business in the African region, right? Then the Economic Development in Africa reports, which we just saw, and then the African Economic Outlook report, and then the one that is done by my own institution, University of Ghana, by the Institute of Statistics, Social and Economic Research, right? The State of the Ghanaian Economy Report, which also comes out every year. Pardon?
Sally, that is sharp.
Yeah, yeah, I have to pitch my people in there. So the sources of secondary data are manifold. It is up to the organization to know which ones are relevant to their activities, especially as a global marketer. It may not be every publication and every report that will be relevant to you, but you need to be able to pinpoint strategic ones that will always give you a good sense of what is happening and a sense of how the changes in the environment can affect your strategies and your activities as a global marketer, so that you can at least be ahead of the times and not always fall back when it comes to taking advantage of opportunities and then mitigating possible threats. Okay. All right. So now that we have finished discussing secondary research, we will go straight into discussing primary research. Lucy says TNS is an acronym for name, and they are in Ghana, and they are part of the Kantar group. Lucy, can you please clarify? Is it an acronym for the Tech Navio? Is that what you are confirming? Lucy?
The acronym for Tyler, oh, it's just left my screen. Tyler Nelson Sofris, or TNS.
Oh, okay. So they are not Tech Navio. Saliu was right.
Yeah, I know. So they are the research person. Saliu was right.
Yes, please. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, please. Okay, so that's it for secondary research. Next, we go into primary research, and that is the one that the organization commissions specifically to address a particular problem that they have identified. So it involves gathering and utilizing first-hand information through original research, tailor-made to answer specific current research questions. So by their nature, primary research are specific, fine-grained, relevant, and up-to-date, because we do not commission primary research unless we have a specific research question in mind or research problem that we want to address. However, compared to secondary research, primary research is very expensive, and it takes a lot of time to gather primary data and convert it into a usable format. So primary data collection often takes more time than secondary data collection, which can be easily done from a desk. Primary research will usually involve you expending more resources and putting in more effort to be able to get your data. And there are two ways by which primary data can be gathered. The first one is quantitative, and the second one is qualitative. And I believe that is what a lot of you are going to do with regards to your long essays that you are going to put together by the end of the semester. So in terms of gathering primary data through primary research, researchers always have the option of choosing between quantitative and qualitative. However, they can also mix the two and use both quantitative and qualitative techniques to address separate aspects of a research problem that they have identified. So we are going to compare quantitative research and qualitative research in primary data collection based on a number of criteria, right? So first, let's look at the objectives. When it comes to quantitative research, the main objective is to quantify the data and generalize the results from the sample that you collect the data from to a population. So you realize that for a company to get a sense of the Ghanaian consumer, they would sample, say, 1,000 or 2,000 out of the how many million consumers in Ghana to be able to try to get insights that they can generalize to the entire Ghanaian population to influence their strategy. Whereas with qualitative research, it's more about gaining initial understanding and underlying reasons and motives. So here they are not seeking a generalization, they are seeking more of an in-depth understanding. And in that case, the numbers are not as large as when it comes to quantitative research, which brings us to the type of research. Because quantitative research is not as in-depth as qualitative research, the outcome of quantitative research is mainly descriptive and causal. So they can describe how a phenomenon takes place on the surface and tell how one or two variables as they relate to the phenomenon influence one another. However, with exploratory research, they delve deeper. They may not necessarily tell you about causality, but they will tell you more about understanding the different variables and how the variables play out within specific contexts. And that is the main difference between quantitative and qualitative research when it comes to type of research. Now, in terms of flexibility in research design, quantitative research has very low flexibility because by virtue of the nature of the process and how data is collected, you have little room to change how you are gathering the data or the form that the data comes in. Because already you go to the field with a prepared survey or questionnaire, and people are given a set number of questions with a number of response options. You either strongly agree or strongly disagree. It's either a yes or a no. It's either frequently or infrequently. There's always a set number of options that the consumer is given to choose between. And the communication is often one way because you are given the questionnaire, you fill it, and then you return it. There's no dialogue that takes place. However, with qualitative research, there's a high level of flexibility because of the two-way communication that takes place in the research process. There's dialogue between the interviewer and the interviewee. So when the interviewer asks the interviewee a question and he gives a response, the interviewer can quickly go back with a follow-up question or ask for further clarification in instances where the response that was given does not provide an adequate response to the question that was asked. Hence, giving them flexibility to be able to gain further clarification as they go along in the research process. However, with quantitative, the flexibility is very low because you cannot say that, okay, the respondent chose strongly disagree. Why? There's no response option for the why. They either agree or disagree. It's either a yes or a no. Hence, the low flexibility with quantitative research. Again, following from the objective, when the quantitative research seeks to generalize the results, definitely they need a large enough sample size that will be representative of the population that they seek to understand. However, with qualitative, because it's more about in-depth understanding, you do not need to interview so many people. You interview a small number of respondents that will give you the level of depth in understanding that you are looking for. So usually these people are selected based on their relevance to whatever is being studied and how much information they can give you that will be in-depth enough to answer the questions that you have. Bridget, your hand is up. Please ask your question.
Doc.
Yes, dear.
Please, I need some clarification.
Please go on.
Under the type of research.
Yes, please.
Is it causal or causal?
It's supposed to be causal.
It's causal. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. So go ahead. Also, in terms of choice of respondents, when it comes to quantitative research, you need a representative sample of the population, like I said, because to be able to generalize to a larger population, you need to make sure that the respondents that you interview or who answer your survey are actually representative or bear similarities with the final population that you are generalizing to. But with qualitative research, like I said earlier, it's about choosing people who will give you the information that you are looking for. In that case, they have to be key informants who have considerable knowledge about the problem that you are researching into. So for instance, you want to interview telecommunication companies about how they handle customer complaints on social media. And then you go and you want to interview people to be able to get to the bottom of this problem on the how. So you want an in-depth understanding of the how. And then you go and interview the head of the accounting department. Please, is this a key informant or not?
That is wrong.
Exactly. Because the person does not have any considerable knowledge with regard to the problem that you are asking. So with qualitative, emphasis is really placed on the considerable level of knowledge that whatever respondent you have selected has in relation to the problem that you are solving. Even though it is also important when it comes to quantitative, you need to make sure that the sample is representative. So if the person has knowledge about what you are studying, but it's not representative of the population that you want to study, they do not qualify. In that case, you have low information per respondent when it comes to quantitative, because again, they have confines within which they can give you responses. It's either strongly agree or strongly disagree, yes or no, or neutral, or anything in between the range of responses that they have to select from. But with qualitative, the information per respondent is high because they are allowed to express themselves and respond without the restrictions of a set number of response options to be able to tell us as much as they can about the phenomenon that we are studying and what we are concerned about. So that is it for the differences between quantitative and qualitative research. I don't know if anyone has anything you want to say to that. Moving on, we can still talk about the data analysis techniques. Again, quantitative is all about statistical summary, whereas qualitative is more subjective and interpretive. The ability to replicate quantitative is also very high unlike qualitative, which is very low to replicate because the responses are unique to the individuals who provide them. And then interviewer requirements, again, you don't have to have any special skills to give someone a survey. The person can answer the survey on their own, even without your input as a researcher. However, with qualitative, there are specific skills you need when you are interacting with your interviewee as an interviewer to make sure that you get as much information out of them to respond to your research issues. And in that case, in the design phase, there's low, how do I put it? When it comes to qualitative, there is a low formulation of questions because you are expecting the person to express themselves freely. When it comes to interviewing, you do not want to restrict your respondent because the moment you restrict them, they may not tell you exactly what you want to know to address your research problem. So when you are designing the research, there's a low level of exact questions that are asked. Most questions that are asked are basically general to allow the person to express themselves as much as they can. However, when it comes to analysis, you need to have a high level of analytical skill because you need to pull the relevant aspects of the plenty information that these respondents have given you qualitatively. And it takes a lot of skill to be able to get the relevant things that will address the issue that you are looking for. However, when it comes to quantitative, it's pretty straightforward. The software runs the analysis for you, gives you certain parameters, and based on the parameters, you can be able to determine whether the responses that you got were significant or not significant, whether the relationship was significant or not, whether there is something there or there is nothing there. So that in a nutshell is the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. So we can see that in primary data collection, your research design begins with your research problem or your research objectives. And based on the nature of your research problem and objectives, you will decide the approach that you want to use, whether you want to use observation, surveys, or experiments. And based on the approach that you choose, your contact methods will be determined, whether you use an email, the mail, which people no longer use, the internet, telephones, or do it on a face-to-face personal level. Again, the contact method that you choose will influence your sampling plan, including your sampling unit, your sampling procedure, as well as your sample size. For instance, if you are doing quantitative, we've learned that your sample size has to be bigger as compared to qualitative, right? And then for sampling procedure, when you are using quantitative techniques to gather your primary data, your sampling procedures have to be more probability-based, unlike qualitative where you can use non-probability sampling techniques to be able to get your respondents. Again, with the contact mediums, which are determined by your sampling plan, for quantitative, you have to design a questionnaire. But for qualitative, you need to formulate specific questions that are designed to gain as much insight from your respondents as possible. And once you are able to create your questionnaire or formulate your questions, you need to pre-test it in what we researchers refer to as the pilot phase, to make sure that the people actually understand the questions that you are going to ask. And then there will be a minimal level of misunderstanding when it comes to the interpretation of the questions and answering them. And once you are able to have a successful pre-test or pilot test, you can go ahead and collect your data and analyze. And depending on whether or not you are using quantitative or qualitative, the analysis techniques differ. For quantitative, for instance, for qualitative, I mean, you can have analysis techniques like thematic analysis, pattern matching, cross-case analysis, within case analysis, you name it. We even have analytical techniques that are specifically designed by researchers for specific purposes, like the Miles and Huberman qualitative data analysis framework. For quantitative, there's a multitude of multivariate data analysis techniques like conjoint analysis, discriminant analysis, cluster analysis, structural equation modeling, multiple regression, ANOVA, MANOVA, logistic regression, to name a few. There's so many of them. So it all boils down to your information requirements and how you hope to address the need for that information. So that brings us to the end of primary research, which yields primary data. Does anyone have anything they want to ask before we go ahead? Is everyone okay?
Doc, I think because of how rigorous primary research is,
yeah,
I think it's always best if you can just outsource that, but it would be good for you to have an understanding so that you can ask the right question.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that, Salim.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, please speak up. Hello.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, please speak up.
Okay. Per my tertiary observation, I'll say that most, like when it comes to long essays and all that, most of us use both quantitative and qualitative.
Yeah, mixed.
Would you? Yes, mixed. What will inform how much qualitative you use, in relation to quantitative or otherwise,
Great.
What would be?
Yeah.
What will help you know that I need maybe 75% qualitative, 25 qualitative for this one, or 50-50, or
Okay. So for instance, it depends on the nature of your research problem and how the research process proceeds. Research is an iterative process. So you may have your method set, you may go to the field, you may collect data, but the nature of the outcome of your preliminary data collection will inform the subsequent approach that you use. So I have a student, for instance, who is doing mixed methods research. Yeah. And there are 3 types of mixed methods. We have the parallel or concurrent mixed methods design, and then the sequential mixed methods design. Sequential is where you do one before the other. So if you have a sequential exploratory design, you do qualitative first, and you do quantitative to justify the outcome of your qualitative. And then if it's sequential explanatory, you do quantitative first, and then you use the qualitative to throw more light on the outcome of your quantitative. But if you are doing parallel, then you are doing both of the quantitative and qualitative at the same time to see if the outcome of both will be the same or contradictory. So my student started, she's doing something on the brand personality of telecommunication companies in Ghana, specifically MTN.
Yeah.
And she came up with a number of brand personality dimensions based on ACAS model. So she went to the field with a survey and then presented the dimensions to people and said, okay, so do you think MTN is rigid? Do you think they are rugged? Do you think they are sophisticated? And majority of the people kept saying, no, 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 no. Even though some people said yes, more of them said no than yes.
Okay.
So there was no conclusive outcome for us to say that, okay, based on this outcome, we are going to do a quantitative to justify. So eventually we said, okay, let's do the same thing, but do it what? Qualitative. So the qualitative and the quantitative now are serving the same purpose. We are going to ask the same questions we asked them quantitatively to see if qualitatively they will give us an in-depth understanding as to why they are saying yes or no.
They are saying no or no.
Good.
Yeah.
So at that point, based on the outcome, you know that you can't do a sequential study. You have to do it concurrently so that you can compare the outcome of both. So it is case by case basis.
Okay.
Depending on your research problem and the outcome of your study. Like I said, she found out after she had finished the qualitative phase that there's no way she can do sequential. It has to be concurrent. Does it make sense, Victor?
It does. It does.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, Salim.
Doc, please, this research too, please, if you can share a copy. I'll drop you an email, please.
When they are done, yes, please. I'll share it. Okay. All right. So finally, let's talk about marketing research based on the web, or as we all know it, the internet, right? The internet has made it so easy for almost all of us, in fact, let me say all of us, to do a great amount of research. So to be able to understand how the internet is facilitating our research in these current times, let's talk briefly about the evolution of the World Wide Web, being the internet. So when the internet first started, they started with what was called Web 1.0, which we also call the static phase. And here it was static because it was one-sided. Every web page that you would open was just one-sided. You could only read information on the page. So for Web 1.0, it was all about users just consulting web pages to obtain content, not necessarily to produce content or to participate or engage with the page. right? So it was primarily driven by content that came from the owner of the web page, which could be a business or an institution, and whatever information they wanted to put out there to customers. So it was one-sided, hence the term the static phase. However, as time went on and evolutions came up, we evolved to the Web 2.0 era, where users could now create and share their own content. And it started first and foremost with the introduction of social media like Facebook and MySpace, where people could now put their own content out there. And then people started blogging and the forums started popping up, and then YouTube came and people started sharing videos. All of that enhanced the level of interaction between customers and institutions or businesses that serve them, hence the level of interaction. However, as time went on, the interaction was not just enough, because you need to be able to know who you are interacting with to be able to interact with them effectively. So the web evolved to the Web 3.0 phase, which we are currently in at the moment, whose ultimate goal is to create more intelligent, connected, and open websites through interoperability, right? And that is how they have come up with all these new technologies like smart home appliances and virtual assistants, as well as the Internet of Things, right? So if you are watching Netflix on your television and you decide to switch to watch it on your tablet, whatever you were watching on your tablet, if you pause at this second and you start watching the same Netflix on your page, it will take you right to where you stopped on your tablet on your phone. That is what we call interoperability. Everything is now connected, right? The smart home appliances are now talking to us, ordering food for us. Alexa is playing specific genres of music for people to listen to. Alexa is ordering food for people, right? Siri is talking to us, making phone calls for us. Now in the US, because of Black Lives Matter and all the racial tensions and the police brutality, Siri has now been upgraded to the point where when a policeman is pulling you over, you can just say, "Hey Siri, I'm being pulled over."
I think she's left.
She hasn't left. She's there.
Okay. Maybe it's the same mic problem that I had earlier. Now and then you need a restart of the machine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and
yes,
we missed you.
Yeah, for a moment there. So sorry. Great.
So you Web 3.
Yes. So like I was saying, Web 3.0 has brought about all this interoperability, where you are watching Netflix on your TV, you swap to your tablet, and then you pause the movie at 10 minutes, 3 seconds. You go and start watching on your phone, and it will continue from the 10-minute, 3 seconds mark. And that is what we call interoperability and the Internet of Things, because everything is now connected, right? You can talk to Alexa. If you have Alexa in your house, Alexa can order food for you. Alexa can play music for you. Alexa can read a book to you even while you sleep, right? Now with the police brutality in the US, Siri has been programmed to be able to save people's lives. So when a policeman is pulling you over in the US now, you can just say, "Hey Siri, I'm being pulled over," and automatically Siri will block all your phone calls and incoming texts and start recording live, just to make sure that they can catch anything that happens to you. And those are all examples of where Web 3.0 has brought us. And like we all know, it is driven by cloud-based services and mobiles, because Siri operates primarily on the iPhone, right? And now everything that we upload, if you have an iPhone or whatever device that you are using, is uploaded into the cloud for access. I believe most of us here have Dropbox, which is a typical example of cloud-based technology. It has saved a lot of us on many occasions. That's a typical example of a Web 3.0 tool that is enhancing access to information. So if I have a report now that I want to share with someone in Taiwan and I can't email it to them, I just create a Dropbox account and share the Dropbox link with them, and we can confidentially share that file just between the two of us. And that is the power of Web 3.0, where we are at now. So how is it enhancing our access to data? First of all, through user-generated content and text mining, right? We have seen a lot of the market research agencies who are producing all these reports and putting them on the internet for people to be able to access. If we had 1,300 and something pounds right now, we would have been able to automatically access the report on alcoholic drinks in Ghana. but unfortunately we don't. So we don't have access to that, but it's available. The moment we get that money, we can quickly go ahead and get it. So firms are now able to understand several topics that are discussed, get a good sense of consumers' opinions, especially when they go through social media platforms and pages that have been developed for these companies that have become forums where consumers go to exchange ideas and share their views. All of these things are able to give us information through the World Wide Web. We can get information about the market structure. Like I said, the alcoholic drink report from Ghana was going to tell us about the structure of the alcoholic drink market in Ghana, right? As well as the competitive environment. All of this is valuable information that a firm operating in that industry can access as secondary data to use for their strategies, right? Also, we can talk about web browsing. There's a huge amount of data that is available to us on the back end of web pages. When you take a website, for instance, and you go to the back end, you can look at the clickstream data, you can look at the page views, the user sessions, the click-by-click uses of consumers, how many clicks they made, how many points or tabs they used on the page before they left, how long it took them on the page to find what they were looking for, how much time they spent on the page before they moved on to the next. All this is valuable information that a firm can store and analyze to be able to influence their global marketing activities. Because as we will learn very soon in a subsequent session, a lot of firms are going global right from the onset using the internet. So by having a website on the internet and going global from the day they were born, which makes us refer to them as born globals, this clickstream data and page views and user sessions and click-throughs that we gather in real time helps them to appreciate and understand the nature of their consumer and how the consumer is using their platform on the internet, which will influence their marketing activities. Because when it comes to selling through the internet, marketers are involved all the way from the design of the page to the choice of colors, the choice of fonts, the positioning of items, to everything concerning the page and how it is designed to ensure that it is able to appropriately target the market segments that the firm wants to get to. So web browsing is another important source of marketing information for firms to make decisions on. Social networks and online communities, like I mentioned earlier, are also another good example. If a firm sets up a social media page or sets up an online community, they have a rare opportunity of getting to see what is in the minds of their consumers, because consumers online share a lot of information via word of mouth. And once the information is provided and people begin to chime in, it gives the firm an objective view of consumers' perceptions of their products and services, of how consumers feel about their products and services, as well as the products and services of competitors and other products that perhaps the company is not selling, right? So researchers can leverage the social relationship information that is provided through these interactions to identify and target perhaps even opinion leaders, to know who to send their communication to influence the entire customer base. You can also look at customer decision-making data, which is used by a lot of the e-commerce platforms that we have. You go and buy something from Amazon or perhaps ASOS, and they get your decision-making data, and based on that, they start making recommendations to you as a result of the decisions you made prior on what you purchased, right? So firms are interested not only in understanding the outcome of their marketing efforts, but also understanding the entire process that customers go through in arriving at the decision. So you realize that every single product that you clicked on before you finally made your purchase will become one of the criteria by which they will start making suggestions to you for future purchases. So by doing that, marketers are able to get a full picture of what is happening right from when you enter the platform to when you make your final purchase. So the entire process becomes a means through which the marketers can sell to you and make sure that they maximize the returns that they make from you, right? And also, it helps to deploy traditional data collection techniques. Previously, without the internet, people had to go through a lot of cumbersome processes and expend a lot of resources to be able to gather primary data. I remember hitherto, if you wanted to conduct a survey in an international country, you had to send the survey to someone who was working there to be able to print out and administer the survey on your behalf, collect the survey, enter the data, and then send the data set back to you. But now, by the power of the internet, you can just deploy your survey through any of the online platforms, either Google Docs or SurveyMonkey, or even if you are doing a qualitative research, use an ethnography to be able to understand the research problem that you are trying to study, and be able to get good data to address the problem that you set out to address. And currently, a lot of students, because of COVID-19, are taking maximum advantage of these traditional data collection techniques being deployed online to get data for their work. I have students who have used Google Docs to administer their surveys. In excess of 300 respondents have responded to their survey, and they have got good data to run analysis for their work. I know some people too who have used Zoom to conduct interviews with industry experts to be able to get insights to address their research problems, right? So these are all ways by which the traditional data collection techniques are being deployed through the web to be able to obtain information. So in essence, we are saying the marketing research process is not a simple one. You have to create a whole process around it, which begins from identifying your objective. And once you have an objective, you need to know the specific kind of information that you need. And these information needs are influenced by the firm's market orientation. When we talk about market orientation, we are talking about the firm's decision to identify and specifically satisfy the needs of their customers. So the products and services that are developed are built around the specifications of the customer and what they want, to ensure that the marketer can give the customer what they want and then obtain value for it. We also have to consider the firm's strategic orientation. The strategic orientation here refers to the conscious influence of the organization's priorities and strategies, as well as their vision on their problem solving and decision making. And like we saw in the Glow example, their strategic orientation influenced every decision that they took. We realized that their strategic orientation was more of an ethnocentric one, based on the EPRG framework, which influenced how they entered foreign markets. And even though it was hurting them, because of their strategic orientation, did not give them the flexibility to adapt to the nature of their foreign markets to be able to maximize their returns. Hence, the problem orientation that they have. When it comes to problem orientation, we can talk about two main types: a positive problem orientation and a negative problem orientation. For a positive problem orientation, the firm generally believes that challenges are bound to come, and they are an opportunity for the firm to rise up above and beyond and become better. So they will do their best to be able to appreciate the nature of the problem and then find ways to solve the problem. But with a negative orientation, they refuse to see a problem as an opportunity to do better. They see it as a doomsday prediction. So the moment they see a problem, instead of taking proactive measures to forestall the problem and its effects, they will sit down and let the problem fester, right? So in that case, they will try as much as possible for as long as they can to avoid the problem and doing anything about it. Sometimes to their detriment, until they get to a point where there's nothing more that can be done about it, and that's a negative problem orientation. So depending on the problem orientation of the firm, we realize that there's a specific information requirements that they have. In the case of Glow, I don't believe they have a positive problem orientation. Because if they did, they would have listened to all the research that had been done and the information that was available to them to take proactive measures to forestall the problems that they are facing today. And they are still avoiding having to deal with the main issues. Hence my diagnosis of a negative problem orientation, right? And this goes down to problem definition, where they are allowing their self-reference criterion to influence all their diagnosis of problems and the decisions that they are making in regard to solving those problems. When we say self-reference criterion, we are basically talking about the unconscious reference to one's own cultural values and experiences and how it affects your decision-making and problem solving. So like Salil and our other colleagues told us, they do not understand why it is working in Nigeria and it will not work in Ghana. That is classic self-reference criterion at work. And until, as a firm, they can realize the self-reference criterion and check it, they will not be able to come up with adequate measures to solve the problem that they have at hand. And they might keep going down in the Ghanaian market until they eventually have to pull out. So once firms are able to define the problem appropriately and checking out the self-reference criterion that most often influences a firm's decision making, they can choose the unit of analysis, where in this case, it depends on whether the firm is selling in another country or in another region, or is seeing the whole world as one market and wants to sell a global product, or where they are dealing with specific subgroups or segments in specific countries. All these will influence the kind of problem that they define and their approach to solving it. And once you choose your unit of analysis, you can examine the data availability. Like we said, you need to check for secondary data before you embark on gathering primary data. So you weigh the pros and cons of obtaining secondary data, the sources that are available, and whether or not the information there is relevant to addressing the type of problem that you have. And on that basis, you can do a cost-benefit analysis to see if the secondary data is enough or you need to go further to do a primary research to be able to obtain primary data to buttress your decision making. And once you do the cost-benefit analysis, depending on whether you want to do primary research or not, you can prepare your research design. And the research design generally goes with the primary research process, where you choose an approach, whether quantitative or qualitative. You choose your sampling technique. You design a data collection instrument. If it is quantitative, you have to develop a skill. And then once you do all that, you embark on your data collection. And then ultimately, the data that you obtain is analyzed. Like I said, there are several data analysis techniques when it comes to quantitative. Likewise, qualitative. Depending on the approach that you choose, you will be able to analyze your data using any of the techniques that I mentioned earlier. And once you are done with the analysis, you interpret your output, then you present your findings in a way that decision makers can rely on to make actual decisions that influence global marketing strategy. And that brings us to the end of our session today. And does anyone have anything they want to say or a question that they want to ask before we sign off finally? Yes, Sally, please speak up.
Yes, Doc, just the previous slide. I think on the problem orientation side,
yes,
I think what is happening currently with the global pandemic is really bringing out and it's making visible the kind of problem orientation that organizations have.
I agree.
Organizations that have seen the pandemic as an opportunity are capitalizing on the opportunity that the pandemic has presented.
Yes.
And they are making a lot of strides and a lot of customer acquisition and revenue from the situation.
That's true.
And those that have a negative orientation, you know, as you explained,
yeah,
are the ones that are seeing it as a problem. Let's fold our arms to see you know, what's happening. I know organizations that have completely changed their strategy and their business plan in order to be able to take advantage of this opportunity that happening in the form of the pandemic. So I think that's very important.
Yeah. Thank you for that submission, Sally. Thank you so much. Please, is there anyone else? Everyone is good?
Madam.
Yes, Ivan.
In fact, I've been really blessed by today's lecture. It's so much informative. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Ivan. My pleasure.
It was very, very, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you too. Yes, Stella, please speak up.
Yeah, mine is a plea. I don't know if today the camera was more or less like off you. If you can, because we try to follow, especially with the gestures and other things. So
okay, you need my gestures. Okay, sure. Yeah. Sure. Usually I turn it off because of the data speed and the connection.
Doc, I think the value is in the content, not the gestures. We appreciate
the line is lying. The line wants to see your pretty face.
Yeah, don't mind that. Don't mind that. He has his own agenda. Or what gestures you want?
Fantastic.
No. But Sally, no. Sally, if it were to be
The
content. We can hear Doc loud and clear. I think that settles it.
Yes, fine.
Bella.
Look at Lucy's face. Hurry up.
Please, the appreciation is good for him, please.
Okay, then I rest my case.
Bella, don't rest it. It's a good point.
Hello, Doc. Hello, Doc.
Yes, please,
Doc, please, can you ask Theophilus Nimo a question? He has not spoken today.
Theophilus Nimo, please. I've told to ask the question. I don't know why.
Doc, I just finished